I'm Amy DeVroon and welcome to Year of the Selfie podcast. 2020 has been a mad year thus far, a year where we've really had to take a look at ourselves. As a self-help nut, this hasn't been hugely out of the ordinary for me, but what has been so unusual is watching an entire creative industry grind to a halt in front of my very eyes. The link between creativity and mental health has always fascinated me, so I wanted to go deeper. In a world where we so often equate success with fame, it can be easy to forget the reason behind it all. Creativity. This unique, inexplicable gift. The thing we do where we lose all sense of time. The thing that lifts our hearts even in the darkest of moments. The thing that many of us feel we were put on this earth to do. So every week I'm going to talk to my guests about just that. Their creativity. Their highs and lows, and where they find their creativity when it feels like there's nowhere to put it. On today's podcast, we have none other than Irish comedy writer and actor, Brona Titley. We had such a genuine laugh on this one. You're going to love it, guys, so get comfy and enjoy. Brona Titley, welcome to Year of the Selfie podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy DeVroon. What a joy and a pleasure. And now we're recording it for the whole rest of the world to have a joy and a pleasure. And I just feel that's very generous of us.
I know, we're so kind. I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled you're on the podcast because you're a great person to chat to. I've only had the one lengthy chat with you on holiday in Portugal. It was pretty epic.
For two Dublin girls to meet in Portugal for the first time. I thought that was very international of us.
Yes,
that was in another time when people could leave where they live.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And where us as people did not have little human beings hanging out of us either.
Which is, had a little human being come out of us. And
I know.
And that changes everything, doesn't it?
It's totally
you think like you're the same person, but then at the same time, a tiny bit of your soul is just sort of like rolling around outside your body.
Yes. And it takes so long for you to come back to it. And when I look back even of having Billy the first couple of months and the stuff I was doing, and I was mental, I was mad.
In what way? Were you sort of like in denial that your life had changed? So you thought...
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and she was a good baby, so she came places with me, and I was like, I was having meetings in London, and I was like flying over with her, bringing Sean as well, and I was like, life doesn't change, you can do everything.
You're like, we can jump out of this plane, just get a baby parachute for the baby. It's fine, my life is the same.
You will enjoy it. Yeah.
I mean, I had a sort of different experience in the sense that Rua was born towards the end of January, and then so life, changes with the human being being yanked out of your body, and then there was a global pandemic 6 weeks later. So I was like, wow, life has really changed with this baby, but maybe I'll just sort of ease myself back into normal life. Boom. Global health crisis. And so I was like, oh, now I have a very tiny newborn and a pandemic, and I'm supposed to just figure that out. It was absolutely bonks.
How did you how did it affect your mood? Do you know what I mean? Because I think, well, it depends on the person. Some people, the hormones and stuff, but I felt like I had this real high after I was on kind of cloud 9. Yeah. But then I can't really imagine that in a global pandemic. Were you able to sort of keep floating along?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wasn't able to float along, but because because it felt so dramatic and so nothing that we have enough time, and there hasn't really been a pandemic in the same scale in 100 years or whatever. It sort of felt like, I don't know, like your responsibility in history to when you hear all the stories of people just coping during the wars, and so I was like, okay, well, this is my time to shine. And so I was a real coper. I was sort of like making the best of things, and so I would be home with the baby all day. And it was during that time where you could I live in London, and you could sort of only go out for 1 hour walk a day, and so I would sort of strap the 6-week baby onto my front and do a sad lap of this cricket field. And I was like, I'm making the best I mean the best of it. We're having a lovely walk. Aren't we having a lovely time? What a lovely global pandemic. So it was all right. I managed to cope, I think. And it's just so amazing now that things are slightly starting to change. And we were able to do like an outdoor baby and parent yoga class in the local park. And we've gone and done some outdoor socially distanced singing classes. And that was the stuff that I know it sounds like absolutely horrendous for some people, but for me, like, I love a bit of social gathering. I love a class. I really wanted to take her to like baby cinema. I just envisaged this maternity leave of like just floating from one tea and cake date to the next tea and cake date. And instead, as I said, it was sort of indoors all the time on that one sad lap of the cricket pitch. So now that things have changed a little bit, I'm determined to enjoy it. But I don't have like a pliable, amenable newborn anymore. I have a bouncing 7-month-old.
Yeah,
slightly different.
I know, because there's that slight shift in time as well. Like it's really like, because even with Billy, when the pandemic happened, I feel like she was maybe about 6 or 7 months, say about 7 months, and she was starting to get more kind of mobile and more like wanting like connection with people. And it was just me and Sean. We're like, again, hey, that's again. Cool. What do you want to do now?
That's really funny. Yeah, Rua didn't see anybody from the age of like 6 weeks up until 6 months. So she was like, this world is just me and my 2 mommies. And then she saw a person for the first time and she was like, I didn't know there were people. Like you never there were people. That's so weird. But she loved it, and now she's sort of seen a few people a little bit closer than 6 feet, because we've been able to bubble with our families and stuff. And so now she's like, oh, what a nice treat that I get to see other people sometimes. So it's good.
Oh my God. And how was it seeing the family as well? Like her, because she would have met the family later. Like we thought she would have met them at like 6 weeks. We were just planning to go over, and instead we had to, kind of abide by the rules and go and quarantine and then sort of just bubbled with them so that we weren't sort of seeing anybody else. But it was brilliant, and I'm so glad that she did get to meet them and everything. So that was deadly. Oh my God, there's nothing like it. So would you technically still be on maternity leave, or how's this pandemic affected your work, Brona?
Has it had a bit of an effect on the arts? It's so hard to tell.
I think they're fine. I think all the...
You know what? Absolutely grand. Live theatre is thriving. Thriving. There was a point of like trying to stay positive and then like edging into delusion / toxic positivity with that. But I am working part-time, so I kind of was doing my keeping in touch days throughout the kind of lockdown and stuff, and then when they lapsed I sort of went back to work a couple of days a week, and then I'm spending the other couple of days a week with Rua. And I didn't sort of plan this balance, because it was sort of like, I think if lockdown hadn't happened, I probably would be going back to work full time. But because TV is sort of a little bit quieter, I've only taken on sort of like the shows that I really, really want to do. And therefore, and also the ones that like justify you being away from your baby. You don't want to be away from like your baby at 7 months for a shite job. For like a nice job. So that's actually like, for the first time I've given myself the permission to not say yes to like everything that comes through the door. But also it happens to be a time when, there's much less coming through the door. So yeah, I did like my first kind of keeping in touch day when she was like 12 weeks old. And that was really weird, because it was sort of like a gag pass on a script for a big live show. And I remember I did it downstairs instead of in my office, when she was like sort of down at her baby gym, like at 3 months. And I was sort of like, typing gags, looking at my baby, being like, it felt like hilarious. Like it felt like I was playing a character.
This looks like what work is.
So it's so funny as well, because I was really frightened about, like, because writing jokes is sort of one of my main day jobs. It's like, as well as acting. But I don't know if it's the same for you, but like the baby brain is real. Like I like, it's funny because it sounds like a negative thing, but of course it's an incredibly positive thing, because your brain is so smart. It's actually pruning all of the grey matter that it doesn't need in order to make space for the hormones that you do need to keep a personal life. So it's a miracle. But it also, like, I forgot how to spell my partner's name. Like, when we came back from Dublin, I walked into the bedroom. I couldn't remember what side of the bed I'd slept on for 9 years. Like, there's...
Oh my God.
absolute, the stuff that's been deleted from my brain is insane. And so I was like, what am I going to be like at work? I won't be able to string a sentence together. And then I was so relieved that for some reason that file hasn't been deleted. So like work, my brain works totally fine. In the house, I'm like, what do you call that thing? It's sort of like round and orange. An orange. That's what it is. It's not like, it's
like your brain goes somewhere else. Like when you do your creative stuff, it's a different part. It's a different part of you. So almost like you can cope, but your life. I remember coming back to the house twice to pick up something I'd forgotten, and both times I just forgot it. And then I arrived at my location, and I was like, I still don't have that thing I went back for twice. Sorry, who? Oh shit, Billy!
What did I come back for? Billy, do you know? Well, you stay there anyway. I'll head back out. That's amazing.
Oh my God. There has been times though that I have turned around in the car and gone, oh no, she's there. Like, she's being particularly quiet or something. I'm like, God.
I've started to do that at night a little bit more because I'm still breastfeeding, and so I'll sort of like, she cries, I'll take her out, feed her, and then I'll put her back in the crib, but then I'll wake up a half an hour later and be like, where is she? Did I put her back? Where have I slept on her? Is she downstairs?
Like, Sean actually woke up thinking he had squashed her one night. He's like, I rolled on her. I'm like, no, you haven't. So just shut up and don't wake her.
yeah, exactly.
But that's so interesting about the saying yes to jobs. So you would have said like yes to, because I think we're so trained to do that, like as artists. It's so fucking hard to say no. I'm having this thing at the moment with my career, and this is where it's really hard as well, particularly in COVID, is like the jobs I would go for have now taken, because of kind of a couple of previous jobs I'm now doing, I there's a kind of a line where my agent's like, you can't really do certain kind of day player roles anymore. They were good for a time. They got you to this. You have to now move on. Yeah. But it's really hard to say no. Like, it's really hard. Yeah. It's like, have you found any freedom in it? Have you any kind of, I think I did start it, to be fair, when I was pregnant, maybe in the last year or 2 years. But I definitely came from a school of thought of, well, if I want to work in this industry of comedy writing and acting, it's a bit of a luxury job. It's not like I'm out there saving lives. Like, and also it's a hard industry to break into. So I'm just going to have to be a grafter. I'm going to have to say yes to everything. I'm going to have to do everything. And also you get the self-employed guilt of, even if you've worked all year, if you take a day off, you're like, what are you doing? Why are you resting on your laurels? So I was always that kind of absolute, like, took everything. And then when I started to say no, because I sort of, like you, had sort of reached the level whereby, like, I didn't necessarily have to do certain jobs anymore, or my day rate had gone up, so I was allowed to say no to the jobs that were offering under that. There was like this, like, demonic power in it. I was sort of like a brass neck on me saying no to like a respectable job that I would have been more than happy to do a few years ago. But I also think that's fine. And like, it is, I'm in my 30s now. It's different in your 20s. Like, you have to say yes to everything. You have to pay your dues. And then if you feel like, actually, I have paid my dues a certain amount, you are allowed to say, no, I know that I'm actually worth this now. And also, I don't have time for that job because I'm kind of aiming towards this job now. And so, you feel so guilty and like the absolute brass neck on you. But then you also feel like, get me. Like, I know.
You offered me a job and I said, no, thank you. Can you imagine? It's so funny. Well, it's like really power in it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Like, do you think it's I wonder, is it an Irish... have you noticed even in London, because I always felt when I was over there, there was just, the industry so different, to how it is over here. Even just the simple things of, like, I remember auditioning, like, when people are, if you're auditioning at like 1 p.m, you are there at 1:45 in London. In Ireland, you rock up at 1. Like, you do that.
Really?
Oh, it was a huge thing I noticed when I was like, no, I'm sorry to anyone. I'm like, sorry to anyone who's offended by that. But it was something I definitely noticed, when I came home. I was like, or, if you were coming in, like, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get there at 1. I'll have to call my agent to let them know when I arrive. They're like, you're grand. Don't worry, we're a few minutes behind.
That's good. I mean, I haven't, and now that you say that, I haven't noticed that, because I guess I haven't auditioned that much in Ireland. I have auditioned for Irish stuff, but over here. But like, God, if I arrived for a 1 o'clock audition at 1, I probably wouldn't go in the door. Like, I was just like, God,
and it's the kind of, And the look of the people, the look of the woman on reception or whatever, you always are just like, I'm so sorry.
And the actress that has been there since 12:20 for her 1:10 audition, and you come in at 1 o'clock. My God. But sorry, did you ask me a question?
Oh, sorry. I was just pontificating about the difference. The difference between the UK, and Ireland in terms of the industry, or in terms of how people are. Like, I feel like there's no shame. Oh, that was actually something I realized as well. I felt like there was no shame over there in like promoting yourself and pushing forward. Is that something you think is true of over there, or is that a reason why you stay over there?
It's a really good question. Like, I do have this thing, like, me as my personality when I make jokes as Brona, not like as an actor or whatever, whereby like British people are quite self-deprecatory, obviously, and I don't know, in a way Irish people are as well, but my sort of version of joking about insecurity is to go the other way. So like, instead of being like, oh sure, what would I know about it, my jokes are more kind of like, well, hi, I'm here, and aren't you lucky to have me? And it's coming from exactly the same place as someone who's like, oh, sorry, it's just that's the way that I've always done it. And so I definitely think I couldn't get away with that in Ireland. I think people would be like, what did you come in here with your notions? Get out of here with your notions. And I think maybe here there's a little bit of, it's so obvious that it's a joke, at least I hope it is.
Yes.
Sort of can sometimes be funny, but I just don't think I've worked enough in Ireland to know the main difference. Like the shows that I have worked on, like last year I went back and I helped, I did some like writers' rooms for the second series of Finding Joy, which is coming out on RTÉ even. And going back to do that show was just like, it was like going home. Like it was like, and I was working with people I'd never met before. It was Treasure Entertainment. Amy Huberman I'd met socially, but we hadn't worked together. But it was just because it was suddenly like everybody in the writer's room has an Irish sense of humor. Everybody that you are having a drink with afterwards, it's just like you forget that there's so much of a shared cultural knowledge of comedy, of character, of storytelling. And like I've done, I've written on a few Irish shows, but just not enough, and not that many that I'd sort of come back for a significant period of time. And it was just so gorgeous. Like it made me feel so happy. And I'd also come off a weird studio job like the week before, where anything that could go wrong did go wrong, including me being bitten by a dog on my first day in the production.
What?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think I'd love to work more in Ireland, but the problem has always been that they're just not making as much original Irish content as they make UK content. And so it was sort of like I always say, I never actually decided, like I've been living in London for over a decade now. I never actually decided to live here. I kind of came out of drama school and then the work was here, and I was always looking for shows to take me home. But then there was, the shows at home were fair enough casting people who stayed in Dublin. And then when I started to write comedy, there's only, 1 or 2 original sitcoms on Irish TV every year. Whereas here I can work on 3 or 4 different TV shows a week sometimes. Just like hopping about, doing a day gag writing here or a pass there. And so it just became about the scale of the industry and how much work was available, more than it ever being a choice to like want to not be there or to actively be here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I felt that myself. I always say I'd never decided to move home. The work just kind of started happening over here, and I just kind of followed it, whereas I was very happy and content over there. Like, so it's such a weird, sometimes it's not necessarily like about the place, but with your drama school, so did you train in Lambda? Am I right of that? Okay, I'll blame my researchers if I'm not, of who is me.
A large team, don't you? There's sort of like,
I do. I mean,
you can, there's like 20 of them, dark room.
Yeah, you can, and you can tell. You can definitely tell by everything, really. By my whole. I mean, I don't do anything by halves, really, quite frankly.
But walk by the door and throw in a bucket of fish heads, like that's so nice. To give them lunch and everything.
I know, the odd time, once a week. It's Friday. I have to do it for them. Fried fish head treat.
Well, anyway, you're
But sorry,
correct. I went to LAMDA.
Yes, you went to LAMDA. So you went to do acting, obviously, which you still do. But so what was like, how did the comedy writing come about? Like, how, like from graduating, were you kind of going, oh, here, there's not much happening? It was a necessity thing. Was it something that kind of came out of something you could do anyway and you really wanted to pursue? Like, what was the kind of...
It's a good question, because there's a really symbiotic relationship between like my writing and my acting now. Like when I look at the shows that I did even in the last couple of years, like I was writing on the Tracy Ullman show and then they cast me in it. I was acting in an ITV show called The Stand Up Sketch Show, and then the following season they asked me to help write it. So like now it's sort of, they go hand in hand so well. But I definitely think, so like I trained at LAMDA, which, you know, I absolutely loved with every fiber of my being. It was like being at acting Hogwarts. Like I just loved it. But like I was speaking about earlier, like the kind of the luxury of the profession, it's sort of like you know, it's quite difficult. Like thousands of people apply to get in, but they take a class of about 30. Then they send out 30 actors into the world at the same time as all the other drama schools, you know, in the world, but especially in the UK and Ireland, they're sending them out. And who in that class will be working kind of, you know, 10, 15 years later? And it is a small percentage. And I think I was always really aware of that. And I was also really aware of the fact that since I was 5 or 6 years old, I knew I don't want to do anything else. Like I just don't want any other job that isn't about some form of like storytelling, so like acting or writing or voiceovers. And so I think I knew I had like an embedded sense of like, if this is going to happen, I have to make it happen for myself. So I definitely had that sense. And I think I didn't really have an idea of my casting when I came out. Like you sort of, like at drama school, that's the joy of it. Like you get to play, you know, everything from like the lead to the, you know, to the character part to, you know, Falstaff. I played Falstaff at drama school. You know, I'm never going to be cast as a 70-year-old man. Like I was, you know, 20-something Irish girl. And so I came out and I didn't know where to find my career. I was kind of looking around going like, like if I'm not going to be cast as Falstaff, like where is it? How do I figure it out? And so I had written comedy before in Trinity College where I did my undergrad. I had written like a comedy play by myself. I had written The Freshers Co-op with a team of writers. Aisling B and I had met in university. We had written a comedy show together and taken it to Edinburgh before I'd gone to LAMDA. So it was in my wheelhouse. But there was definitely a moment of post LAMDA where I had like a little bit of a part-time job for money that wasn't related to the industry, and then had cleared enough of my week for auditions, but was also like, now I also need to create work. And so that's just what I started to do. I started to write like you know, sketches, web series, short things, and like anything to just create work, I guess, like to try and make it happen. I mean, you have a very similar path in the sense that you were like, you know, well, if I want the roles that I want, I'm gonna put on myself. It was really just that. And then I guess I'd always like been interested in creative writing from when I was a child as well. And so, you know, I was okay at it, but I only have the career that I have in terms of like actually writing on comedy shows now because I honed it. Like I just kept learning and kept trying to get better and also just didn't stop. So then I sort of, once I started comedy writing, I just kept it up and tried to keep it going alongside acting. And then for kind of the last decade since I've been out of drama school, they have kind of gone, oh, sometimes I'm acting more, sometimes I'm writing more, and then they sort of do this sort of yo-yo kind of relationship to each other. But I love it the best when it's like I was saying, when I can do both on the one show, or when I'm doing one writing job that year alongside an acting job and that kind of thing.
And did it help keep you from kind of, I say going under, like mentally going under? Because I feel like with the writing that saved me. I think I would have just been like I would have just been in the depths of depression if I hadn't found it. Because I think for me, I very much found it. I kind of didn't even know I had it.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that you found it. Yeah, definitely. I remember the principal of Lambda at the time was a wonderful man called Peter James. And I remember him saying very clearly, like, advice doesn't always stick with me, but like this bit of advice did. And he said, go to an audition from a busy life and then audition and then go back to your busy life. And I was like, so helpful.
I love that.
Because even in those early days, like I think if I had an audition at 4:00, I would do nothing else all day except obsess about the audition, not even work on it. And then that's the entire, and maybe even the day before, and that's the entire day lost. Now I would sort of never do that. It would sort of be like, that's my 4:00. I have other things to be doing up until. So I think I definitely held on to that and tried to create the busy life that would mean that it also takes away the importance of like your one shot at the day player on that one show, and that's all you've gotten to audition for that month. Like if your whole month is about that 1 hour and you fuck it up, which I so royally and often did, like I'm a terrible auditioner, like honest to God, so bad. And then, you know, if you have other things in your life, then that's gonna be less important, and it's gonna impact your mental health. And if that's like you've been pinning your sights on that 1 hour or 10-minute slot for the past month. So I guess it was like a survival mechanism of make sure that there's other things in my life that are within my control, because actually getting that it's never going to be within my control, because the second I walk through the door, I might be too short, too blonde, too Irish, and too friendly.
It's such good advice, because I remember saying that to somebody else before. It's like, have other things in your mind, because it does, and I think it does make you not great at auditions as well if you're obsessed with it. Either way. And also I always feel like you get to a point where you're going, can you not just look at my show reel, and can you not just look at the things that I do, because please, like, don't make me go into the room, because I feel like sometimes it's just not. I don't know if it's a very I know it's it's a good process. It's an important process to getting a job. But I think for some people, they don't do well in an audition setting.
It's really interesting. Like I say that I'm bad at auditions, but I think the truth is closer to the fact that I'm either terrible at the audition or brilliant at it, and there's no in between.
No in between.
No in between. And it's because that like fierce desire to get it, and the fierce work that I will have done, and the energy that I'll bring into the room of trying to make everyone laugh and trying to make everyone like me and trying to make the whole audition into this wonderful 10-minute one-woman show. That will that's Marmite, I think, to people. And so they'll either be like, oh my God, that's amazing, or that's the worst thing that we've ever seen in our life. And I feel like I did the exact same energy on like 2 auditions in the last year or 2, and one of them, like, I actually had to back out of the room, like hoping to never see any of those people again, because I could feel the room going, that's the worst audition we've had all day. And the other one I backed out of the room having done the exact same thing, and heard that like one of the casting team say, Brona is exactly what I pictured when I pictured this role, and like the door was just shutting as I heard it, and I got the job. And I was sort of, well, I don't really know, like, I feel like I still need to bring it down, but it's funny that it completely works or completely doesn't work. And it's also just like, it's a very fine line when you're too much or an exciting amount of a lot.
An exciting amount of a lot. I do remember in an audition once, and came out and I was like, what just happened? I was like making jokes and pointing at the director, and I was like, whoa! And I sort of walked out, and I was like, oh my God, what just came over me?
What I've noticed about myself as well is that like the nerves that I bring into an audit, like I'm so nervous, but when I get the job, when I turn up on set, I'm never nervous, and I'm never too much, and I never have that. I think there's something in the getting of the job that like they've gone, okay, you're right, we know what you look like, we know what you sound like, we want you. And so like on set, it's never a problem to do the job. In auditions, I can sometimes be such a bad actress that you're like, did you really go to drama school? Like, do you really think you can do this as a job? Because, like, what you've just done is the worst acting we've ever seen in our lives. And so I don't know, it's like I would love to be able to like temper this sort of like ridiculous extreme that I have in auditions, and maybe I need to work on it, but I'm glad that it doesn't then follow me into the job. At least I have that.
Exactly. No, it's so true. But like with because you are hilarious, your Twitter is just, I love your Twitter. I just love your Twitter. You know, in a world so dark sometimes, and even in a medium of Twitter, which can be very dark, it's just a little beacon of light in it, and they are hilarious.
format for just sort of like practicing writing short jokes, I think. And I like to keep it sort of silly and warm rather than, the darkness of 2020 penetrating everything.
Because even sometimes when I try to write something like on Twitter and then like, and I'm like, I just can't distill it. No, I can't. I'm like, and then also, like it's just a mess. It's a hot mess. But do you find it like so I find with comedy, and anytime I've written anything, like any of my, I feel very strange saying this to you because I'm like, you're like comedy, but like any comedy kind of shows that I've written myself or my one woman shows, I feel like I can process the world better through comedy. Do you find that yourself? Is that like a coping mechanism or being able to distill it into something?
Yeah, definitely.
Positive?
I think it's been like, I'm pretty sure it's been a coping mechanism my whole life. Like, I think maybe it has a little bit to do with the family that I came from as well. Like, you've met them, they're very funny. There's 7 of us. Everybody's very outgoing. And all my siblings are really funny in a very different way. Like, my sister Aoife is probably the funniest out of all of us, but she's extremely dry and witty, in a way that, whereas me and Fergal are a little bit more gregarious and gaggy, and also there was just, with a family of 7 people, everyone just mercilessly takes the piss. And so I think that it was a language that I spoke from very early on, and nobody makes me laugh as much as my siblings. Well, maybe some people. And so I think that it was a feature of my personality from, like, I can kind of remember being about 12 or 13 and being in drama class. I went to the Gaiety School of Acting on Saturdays, which I really loved. And I remember just like, we were just getting ready to do an exercise, and I said something funny, and then the whole room laughed, including the teacher. And it was that moment of taking drugs for the first time. I don't actually weirdly take drugs, but it was just like I got the buzz up through my whole entire body, and I was like, oh, what is this? I like this. And so I think then it also, I think there is a power in, when things are going a bit rough or when the world is a bit dark, in trying to find the comedy in it. And sometimes that comedy on the edge is the most exciting thing. And what I've done in recent years in terms of like my professional life, in terms of working on topical comedy shows, is taken, like I was a writer on 8 out of 10 Cats, which is a topical comedy show, during like that mad time in 2016 when it was sort of like the election, Trump was elected, that was happening, Brexit that was happening in the UK. And so I had to read the news every day, and read objectively kind of like frightening and depressing stuff, and then try and find the spin that was actually quite funny. And also, it's not like I want to talk about Trump during this podcast, but he was like such an interesting challenge because he was so ridiculous. You couldn't really make jokes about Trump because he was such a parody of himself anyway. And also, kind of thought that he was going to come and go. We didn't know that he was going to stay, and that we would all sort of live in this sort of ridiculous place for 4 years now. And so I think it became a skill that I had to develop at work as well, which is sort of like, what's going on. But then there's also lines that you don't cross. There was times when there would be like bombings or quite serious things that happen, and we just wouldn't talk about them in the context of what the news that week, because you can't, and that's the right line, I think. But then you also can make jokes about like the struggle, and that helps people to process it. It certainly helps me to process it.
And is there like a freedom in, if you're writing for, so like in that you're writing for a show, so you're presumably writing for other people, but if it was you, like, is there freedom in being able to sort of just send the jokes out there through somebody else? Like, if it was you, would you feel a bit more like nervous of joking about certain things? Or,
well, that's interesting. I wonder if it's actually the other way around. I sort of would be, I would be a little bit more reckless about what I would say. Whereas if you're writing for somebody else, you have a responsibility to not get them in trouble in a way, I suppose.
Yes.
But I so love writing, and I love writing comedy, and I so love acting. but I've never really been drawn to being a stand-up, like, at all, or even being the version of a stand-up on TV where you play a version of yourself and do jokes about stuff. I much prefer the sort of clear delineation of I'm acting a role, or I'm writing a script. And so I don't actually know how I would feel if I was sort of on a topical comedy show making jokes about serious stuff as myself, because it just hasn't been something that I've ever wanted to do. It just is a different, slight different lifestyle to being a writer and an actor, I think.
Yeah. And do you like, is there one that takes over with the acting and writing, or do you kind of love them equally, like two of your children?
No, I hope I'll love my children equally. It's hard to believe that when you only have one child and you think she's the best thing. You're like,
I know,
your poor fucking siblings, because how will I ever love them as much as you? But I understand that you do. And no, the truth is I love one way more, and it's acting, and it always has been. And I'm so grateful to writing for teaching me everything that it has done about acting, and also for being how I stayed in the industry. I don't think I'd like to think I wouldn't have given up, but it certainly would have been a lot harder if I hadn't have found this thing that I can do that kept me known in production offices and paid the mortgage while acting kind of, caught up in a way.
Yeah. And do you feel, with having done all the comedy writing and things, do you feel like you're clearer on what your casting is now? Because I feel like it takes years to even get a grip on that. Like,
yeah, it's really interesting because I can see other people's castings so clearly, but I could never see my own. I kind of did think I could play, I could come out of drama school and just play all of the roles that were a female somewhere between 16 and 40. I think I would be suitable for all of them.
Of course.
Every single one. And so now, definitely, like, now I am looking for essentially like the funny Irish best friend. That's sort of, that's sort of what I'm looking for. And then there's little offshoots, around that you can play. And it's not that I can't play serious. It's just that why now would anyone bother casting me in a serious role unless I got much more of a profile in comedy, in the way that like Olivia Colman was so big in comedy and then went back to drama, and everyone was like, oh, she's incredible at this. And she had been doing it the whole time, but people, love to put you in a box. So
yeah, totally.
I think I have more of, and that's quite good because then I can write those roles for myself. Then I can read scripts that other people are making and I can make a beeline for the right role instead of thinking like, oh, is there anything in it for me? And then allowing people to call me in for roles that I'm not right for, but they're not quite sure, but they weren't quite sure. So I think that's been a really important lesson, actually. Do you feel like you're there with that now?
Yeah, I think I'm slightly clearer. I still find it hard. You're asking me, yeah? Sorry, I'm just. I love that. I'm like, I'll just butt in here. I think, I think, I think I am getting clearer. But I think I found it really hard in the first few years, like after drama school, because I was tall and blonde and in my 20s, or my early 20s. And it was just the kind of, and everyone used to slag our year in drama school, because our year, they used to call it the Hollyoaks year. We were all just the kind of mini clones of each other. Whereas with the year above us, there was a great mix of ages and all that. It wasn't until the postgrads came in, it kind of mixed things up for us a bit. But our year just happened to be quite young. So I found that very hard. And I think I'm clearer now on what I can bring, and especially since writing my own shows and finding the funny in me, finding that kind of stuff. I think
if you'll forgive the compliment, you're also just a bit more versatile than me. Like, we had met and known each other socially when I saw you in Line of Duty. I watched that whole series, and then at the end I was like, I must Google that actress and see who that was, because she was amazing. And then you. No, and I was like, oh, it's Amy. Hang on a second, that can't be right. And I was blown away, like, because it's so brilliant when you see somebody being brilliant, you look them up and then you realize that they're totally different to what the role is like. And I don't think that you would find. I mean, I don't think that would happen with me. I think if you saw me on something, you'd be like, there's Brona.
I recognize her. I think it was a gift though. I think that job was definitely a gift, as in I always knew I could do other accents. I always knew I could I don't like, but like the no makeup and all those kind of things when she's obviously finding out about her husband and everything. There are things that people just don't expect, assume I can do, or or there's a thing as well, like where it's like, you play a great lawyer or a great doctor because you talk nice and and your hair looks nice in a bun. You know, I always feel a bit like that. I'm like, great, but I can actually. So I think it was a gift. I think everyone can. But thank you for the compliment. I'm thrilled.
You're welcome. Yeah. Do you want some compliments? I've written down.
You look like you were reaching into a bag of compliments.
Ooh, lovely teeth. Great set of teeth.
Great set of gnashers on you there.
I'll leave the back of compliments to.
Oh my god. Yeah. But and it's like. Sorry, I'm just thinking a similarity that we have as well is we both have 5 kids in our family. So you've got 5 children. Yeah. So when I met you, I'm second youngest. So where are you?
Number 4.
That's so funny because I wanted to ask you this. I was thinking that because I was saying in another podcast, sometimes I feel like as the second youngest, whatever way it falls, I always feel this in the family, this kind of responsibility, and they'll probably slag me for it because they'll be like, no, you're not, Amy, fuck off. But like, as in like to keep things, to make like the funny out, like to keep things light and be like, you know, to raise the mood if it's getting a bit serious, or if there's a conflict, I'm like, hey guys, look at me, I'm making shapes over here, laugh, you know.
God, it's mad. I don't think it's very often that I've met somebody, a woman who is number 4 or 5 in an Irish family. That's actually brilliant to know that's you. And I play exactly the same role. Like the idea of us all being together and not laughing, you know, or something serious kicking off would be me in the middle going like, generic thought plucked from the air, you know, in order to change the subject and make everything feel warm and safe again. But so that's mad. Maybe that is a birth order thing, but it is also just an interesting place to be in terms of like second youngest or fourth or fifth, because you're not the oldest, you're not the youngest, you don't even have the middle child title. You know, you like, my parents are extraordinary people, and of course they love us all equally, but also our experience wasn't equal. Like I see it now with my first child. Like sometimes myself and my partner just like spend hours just staring at her, marveling at how she like you know, picked up something and looked at it. Like there's no way we'll have time to do that with a second child, never mind a third, never mind a fourth. So like when I do say to my mom like, oh, what was my first word, or when did I walk, where, and she's like, I don't know.
It sounds like my mum.
There were 4 of you, and also you're all kind of rearing each other instead of having the like adult attention, you know, which sort of does probably makes you a bit of a messer, more of a messer, I don't know.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, and you can get away with a bit, like the stuff that I could have gotten away with that my older sisters didn't or wouldn't dream of. You know, like it was always a bit, or it was just a bit stricter, I think, as well with them. Whereas by the time it came down to me, it was like, she's nearly
broken.
Sure, let her up. Let her do what she wants.
What's the gender split? Are you
all girls?
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's a terrifying little tribe, actually. Like I think we always say the men that have come into the household and sort of stayed there are like there's a confidence in them, because you know we always feel like we're slightly intimidating. There's this thing of like, because we're brown, not to broom, but like brown, and everyone's like, oh, the brown girls. Okay. Like it just feels like there's a
a tribe.
A tribe, and probably no one's really shy or retiring or like we're not sort of. I feel like we're quite confident in ourselves.
The confident coven of browns.
Yeah, exactly. Stay away. So it's quite intimidating, I think, for a certain.
That's quite nice, and no wonder like Sean Brannigan stuck around, because he's quite he knows who he is, and he's very like in himself.
Yeah, that's very true.
And so that you can imagine that he wouldn't be scared of the confident coven of brown girls. Yeah.
No, I think he quite him and the other fellas quite enjoy it, and. It's quite well, he's the only one who did stick around, so
you need one in the end.
Exactly. Sure, fuck it. It's true.
Unless you know, it's okay to have a few that stick around too.
Exactly.
Polyamorous relationships.
No, exactly. In Ireland, it's so
common.
So common. It's very common. But how, like, so sorry, just thinking of tribes, and you have a great relationship. I'm kind of reluctant to bring it up in a way with your fantastic soulmate relationship with Aisling B, because I think it's so, because this is about you, so it's so funny to bring somebody else. But I just thought I just wanted to lean on it while speaking of tribes and family and stuff, because it's very unusual. I think, first of all, I think if you come from a big family, you know, I personally think you've quite a high expectation of friendships. This is my own experience now, I think, because
interesting,
you've got people around you that will kind of stick by you no matter what, or it's you know, there's so many of them, you're not kind of relying on one or two. And another part of that is, I think it's really interesting that you've such a friendship with somebody that you work with, especially because you're women. Because sometimes I find when those friendships occur, that you can find somebody that you work well with, particularly a woman, they kind of, you need to hang on to them. And is that something that you guys kind of very obviously did? Because yeah, to me, it's so often, particularly post drama school, any creative friendships that I would have had with women could so often turn into envy or jealousy or any of that. And it just does not seem that is a relationship that you guys have. You seem to very much raise each other up and work well together and all of that. And it's a public relationship. So I just wanted to briefly touch on it. I think it is. I've heard it in other interviews.
Speaking of it being a public relationship, when I got married a few years ago to my now wife, Sue, the parent of a friend I went to school with sent me an email congratulating me on my marriage to Aisling B. And that really made me laugh. I'm delighted you brought it up. To be honest, it's a privilege to speak about her, because yes, our friendship is incredible, but she's also just one of the most incredible people that has ever graced the planet. Like, anyone who knows, like, the sort of public image that you see of Aisling, of this, you know, extremely funny, extremely talented, extremely beautiful person, is like the tip of the iceberg. I was going to say literally the tip of the iceberg, but she's not literally an iceberg.
That'd be incorrect.
Like, she's all of that, and then she is this incredible sort of like powerful, active kindness that you just don't get in sort of normal people. So she isn't a normal person, and so it's an extraordinary gift in my life. But I think Aisling sort of publicly at some point coined the term soulmates, or comedy soulmates, when she spoke about me, which is, you know, so wonderful and lovely and made me so happy. But it also does feel very kind of relevant. And I think that you do have, you know, I don't believe in soulmates in the sense of like the rom-com version where there's sort of like one person you're supposed to be with, and, you know, and good luck to you finding them in the 7.5 billion people on the planet.
And if you haven't, you're a failure. You know?
And I think that there's loads of soulmates for for everybody potentially, if you do the work. But then there also is this maybe friendship soulmate, or a professional soulmate, or you're like a spiritual soulmate, I suppose. And so Aisling and I met in Trinity when we were both students there before, and then I was the year ahead, so I went off to Lambda, and then she followed to Lambda. But we had noticed each other, kind of as actresses and as funny people around the Players, which is the theatre, the student theatre. And then Aisling had approached me, asked me to write with her. And then when we started to do that, it was just sort of like, just like a gorgeous meeting of minds, because we're the sort of ultimate sort of silly yes ands to each other, but then we also are extremely different. So we have different personalities, we have different temperaments, but both of them just complemented each other, and we never fought, and we never like kind of fell out, and we excited each other. To this day, like I always say this to Aisling, because we've been friends now for I don't know, like 16 years or whatever, and she still like kind of like friendship flirts with me. Like she'll still send me a message, and then I'll reply with a joke, and then she'll top it with another joke, and then we're just texting jokes back, like the way that you do when you're meeting somebody. And I'm like, I can't believe you still keep the spark in our relationship after all. But I also think that it's like I'm not a I've never been a jealous person. I don't think Ashley has either. But I also don't think jealousy or envy serves you. Like, I'm a big subscriber to the belief that there will always be people less better off than you. There will always be people more better off than you. And it's just a literal waste of your time to, you know, to compare yourself to others. And so I've always been very excited by other funny people around me and by other successful people around me. And I'm very interested in us all raising each other up like that, you know, International Women's Day gif of like helping someone up the ladder and then you get helped up. This sort of like, you know, I think that and that doesn't just apply to women, like that applies to everybody. And so I'd be a subscriber to that more than a sort of a, oh, they're doing better than me and I've really noticed that kind of person. And so like we're sort of each other's favorite collaborators in one way, and then in another way now our careers are very different because we've sort of gone in completely different directions, but we'll always kind of pop back and work together when we can. But also we're also best friends, and so we're sisters in the sense of how we kind of occupy that space in each other's lives. And that is just one of the greatest, you know, that friendship and other friendships are just like one of the best things about being alive. Like, it's just so lovely to have that love in your life. And the way that Aisling speaks about me is I don't even know if I deserve it half the time. It's like she has me on a pedestal, which is just very complimentary. But also quite scary. So I tell her just to be careful because because it's like scary to be put on a pedestal because you're like, then I will fall off that and it'll be but then maybe I am perfect, Amy. So actually,
I think you are. I think you're perfect. So I think
she should probably make that pedestal higher because I'm.
She needs to raise that up. Quite frankly, really. Yeah. No, it's lovely to hear. It's lovely to hear that it's not dependent on the work that you do, that you can go off and you can come back together. And I think those relationships are quite hard to find. I definitely would have them in my personal life, and I always strive for them a little bit in my professional or creative life because I think sometimes, like, how I think about the industry or how I view acting or my creativity is kind of different sometimes to other people's. And then even talking on the podcast, I was chatting to a friend of mine, Paul Reed, on the podcast a while ago. Right, how he was talking about creativity, I was just buzzing off it because I was like, yes, and that's exactly how I think. That's exactly, well, we've worked together a few times and I'm like, that's exactly why we buzz off each other, is because have that same set, you know, whereas
there's a spark and a chemistry, and I love that about actors, that everybody, and people in comedy, I suppose, as well, that everybody is so willing to be extremely emotionally intimate immediately and also physically intimate. I mean, that not currently in days of COVID, but like I always think it's so funny when I like rock up to a rehearsal room and on the first day, like, you're getting notes and you just sort of like lean your head on the shoulder of another actor beside you, or just put your arm around them while you're getting notes and kind of lean them like you're puppies. I just always think it would be really funny if it was like your first day as an accountant and you're sort of like at the briefing meeting, you're just kind of leaning your head up against the accountant next to you. And I suppose that really speaks to my personality in terms of just like, I like that I'm excited by emotional intimacy, especially if it's immediate. Like, it's just like I just don't have, like, this world is so baffling and exciting and terrifying and glorious and amazing and awful that you just don't have any interest in meeting somebody and having to spend weeks talking about the weather and like slowly know them. You could just flip the switch and be like, get right in with like the best and worst things that's ever happened to them and what their deepest, darkest desires are. That's so much more exciting.
Oh my God, I totally agree, because I kind of, and I think that's why I'm really shit at small talk. I hate small talk. I hate it so much. Like Sean in the relationship is definitely like, if we need the small talk man to come out, I just like, we're pushing forward because I can't. I need to be like,
that's very funny.
How do you feel about this? What do you think about this? How do we, communicate about this? I can't. I hate small talk. It makes me feel so uncomfortable. Whereas, but I could tell you everything about my deepest, darkest fears, and it won't take a feather out of me. But that's for the next podcast, Brona.
I am here for that next. I am subscribing already. I am clicking subscribe on that next podcast.
Amy's deepest, darkest fears. Very reluctantly coming up to my last question now, because you've a baby to get back to for God's sake, and we all
Totally.
have our lives.
It is relevant. Yeah.
What,
raising herself.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm like, where is she again?
Yeah. Did I put her?
Yeah, she's somewhere. What does creativity mean to you? It's a very open question. So
yeah, I mean, I love this question, and I have listened to your excellent podcast, so I know that you ask people this, and I purposely didn't sort of like consider it too much, because much as I like would love to give you a really like articulate, quotable soundbite, it's actually very simple, and I think it is just the freedom to make shit up. Like, I absolutely love the feeling that there are no rules, there's no boundaries, that like this blank page can be whatever you want it to be. This character can walk with, you know, a slightly more weight on the left hand side if you think that's relevant. Like, you can make that choice. I love that. And I used to be really, as a writer, I used to be really terrified of the blank page. But then I found not quite quickly, but I found over the first few years in the industry that what's more terrifying than a blank page is a page that is still blank a week later. And so like, I just gave myself permission to write on that blank page, and for it to be shite, because it might be shite for a while, but if you keep going in and changing things, it'll eventually make the journey to not shite. Which is what I aspire to, not shite. And similarly with like acting, it's like the creativity of acting is just play. Like, there's definitely, I don't think it'll change, but there's definitely the 6-year-old inside me who begged my parents to let me go to drama class. And then when I got there, it was like games and exercises and pretending to be Finn McCool, and it's just like playing. And that I do have sort of like, you know, I really like kids things. I like it, like I go and see kids films by myself, just because it's like, I think that sometimes there's just incredible storytelling there. And so there is a part of me that like will always be 6 years old. But I think like, it's like playing, making stuff up, being free with it, like trying to make sense of, as we've already covered, like quite a baffling and sometimes dark world by exploring facets of your imagination that like you haven't explored before. And like I was saying earlier, when I was saying like I just always knew I wouldn't want to do anything else. I think it's because I've been a junkie for that feeling of freedom within creativity since I was a child, and I'm not willing to surrender that.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly how I feel. And that feeling as a child, and not wanting to lose that. Definitely no boundaries. Oh, I love that. You're a little shining light, honestly. Thank you so much.
Lovely to speak to you. I genuinely could talk to you all day.
I know, it's been so nice.
And text our partners to take the kids out for the day and just stay.
Yeah, exactly. Be like, no work for you today. We're chatting. Thank you.
Are shooting the shit. We are the fourth child in the family of 5.
You don't understand what it feels like, guys. It's been such a pleasure. I've loved every minute of this, and I was nervous, so I'm.
Oh, that's adorable. For the over here.
I won't be next time now.
Well, it was so joyous to be here, and thank you for giving me just like a platform to speak wank, because it's one of my favorite things to do.
It was brilliant. It was such quality wank. Thank you so much.
Good quality. A quality wank is all we can aspire to.
What a perfect note to end it on. Thank you so much, Brona. I really appreciate it. So there you have it. Brona C. Titley. What a beacon of light and joy. Such a positive force in nature. Like, I really loved chatting to her. I think what's really interesting as well is chatting about, you know, how you know, the job that maybe is not the overriding passion, how that can teach you so much about your passion. So obviously she's a very successful comedy writer and she loves that very much, but her huge passion is acting. But how much she's learnt about herself and about her craft through her writing. And I think that's just of great comfort to all of us, because we know that we're not just one thing, you know, and everything that we do in our careers is informing our deepest and greatest passion. So thank you so much, Brona. I had such a nice chat. Let's do it again sometime. We'll get the little baby girls together. I mean our baby girls, not ourselves, us too. But yeah, it was such a lovely chat. You're doing so great, and I just wish you all the best in the world. Thank you so much for taking the time, especially with the little bambino at home. It can be tough. So I really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please share. Please subscribe to our YouTube or Apple Podcasts. We're also on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Share, enjoy, and have a great day, guys.